Hi and welcome to True Crime, a channel dedicated to the dark underworld of criminal activity carried out by gangsters, mobsters, cartel leaders, and others. In today's video on the increasingly alarming situation in Chinese prisons, recent reports have revealed that the conditions in these facilities have reached a critical point with accounts of severe human rights abuses and mistreatment of inmates. From overcrowding to inadequate medical care, the situation in Chinese prisons is getting out of control. Let's get started. Chinese prison horror. Stuart B. Foster's story of his time in a Chinese prison is not just a heart-wrenching account of his ordeal, but also a testament to the indomitable human spirit. Imagine spending 8 months in a small, moldy cell that's barely larger than a racquetball court. Now imagine sharing that space with 30 other prisoners, all sleeping on the hard, cold concrete floor without blankets or pillows. It sounds like a nightmare, but for Foster, it was his reality at the White Cloud District Detention Center in Guangzhou. The dehumanizing conditions didn't end there. Every day, the prisoners were forced to line up at the crack of dawn to brush their teeth together, using a single hole in the ground as their only toilet. They were made to chant communist slogans, recite detention regulations, and march in a place like soldiers. It's enough to make your blood boil. Stuart B. Foster's account of his experience in a Chinese prison is a chilling reminder of the brutality and inhumanity that can occur behind bars. Even during the holiday season, prisoners were subjected to grueling work hours and harsh punishments. In the lead-up to Christmas, they were made to line up and assemble Christmas lights all day long, with only 10-minute breaks for lunch. And if they didn't meet their quota of 6,000 lights, they were met with punishment. But the punishments didn't end there. The most common one was withholding the daily ration of 2 hand-rolled cigarettes, which might not sound like much, but for prisoners, it was a lifeline. And if that didn't work, food rations would be cut in half. The food options were hardly appetizing, just rice, turnips, and a little pork fat, but enough to sustain life, according to Foster. However, some of the punishments were far more severe. Prisoners who disobeyed or acted out were shackled and chained to the floor for up to 2 weeks. It's enough to make your skin crawl. From the moldy, overcrowded cell to the grueling daily quotas and brutal punishments, Stuart's account of his time in a Chinese prison is nothing short of a nightmare. And while he was lucky enough to have the protection of U.S. laws, the same cannot be said for the millions of other prisoners trapped in China's unforgiving penal system. With a jaw-dropping 1.7 million people incarcerated as of June 2020, China is second only to the United States in terms of the sheer number of prisoners. But for those on death row, the situation is far direr. In China, a prison sentence and a death sentence are often the same, with Amnesty International estimating that thousands of prisoners were executed between 2016 and 2020 alone. And the true number of executions is likely much higher, given China's notorious secrecy around its death row policies. But the horrors don't stop there. When you think of organ harvesting, you might imagine that the donors are already dead, right? Well, think again. Shocking new research from the Australian National University shows that Chinese surgeons are not waiting for their patients to be fully deceased before removing their organs. A review in a Chinese scientific journal uncovered 71 cases where organs were taken before a legitimate determination of brain death between the years of 1980 and 2015. What's worse, these physicians are essentially acting as executioners on behalf of the state, and their method of execution is heart removal. Even though China announced the implementation of a new national system to phase out the practice in 2012, it appears to have moved to prison camps instead. It's here where Falun Gong practitioners and Uyghur Muslims are the main detainees, with over 1.5 million detainees and prisoners being killed for their organs to serve a booming transplant trade worth a whopping $1 billion a year. Survivors of these prison camps have testified to the tribunal that they were subjected to physical examinations, including blood tests, x-rays, and ultrasounds, to ensure that their organs were healthy and fit for transportation. Organ harvesting in China is not just a practice reserved for criminals on death row, but also targeted towards specific ethnic, linguistic, and religious minorities. People are being arrested without any valid reasons or warrants and are subjected to physical examinations to ensure that their organs are healthy and suitable for transplant. The UN human rights experts have reported that hearts, kidneys, livers, corneas, and even parts of livers are the most commonly removed organs from prisoners. Shockingly, China is the only country in the world that has an industrial-scale organ trafficking practice that harvests organs from executed prisoners of conscience. While China has the second-largest transplant program in the world, the promise to stop using organs from prisoners made in 2014 was contradicted by Wang Jifu, who hinted that death row prisoners may still be used if they were truly moved by their conscience. It's a sinister and frightening reality that human lives are being sacrificed for the sake of profit and convenience in China's organ trafficking industry. Imagine being imprisoned for standing up for your rights and beliefs, only to be subjected to inhumane treatment. This was the reality for labor rights activist Liu Nanqin, who was serving a 3-year labor re-education term in a Chinese prison. Liu staged a hunger strike to protest against the authorities, and what followed was nothing short of barbaric. He was beaten with electric shock batons, denied water, and even placed in solitary confinement. Despite suffering from blocked intestines, swollen lymph nodes, and mouth ulcers, Liu was denied medical treatment. Unfortunately, Liu's story is not an isolated incident in China's penal system. Wang Guoqi, who was in prison for 11 years, was denied all family visits simply because he failed to memorize the prison rules. Meanwhile, Zhou Gajin, who served a 30-year sentence, was left untreated for tuberculosis contracted in prison. The stories of human rights abuses in Chinese prisons are not just limited to physical abuse, but extend to the point of torture and even death. Yesi Samden, a Tibetan monk, suffered 2 years of unspeakable torture during his imprisonment at Trisum prison. Though he was released, he sadly passed away just 6 days later due to the extensive injuries he sustained. Another tragic example is that of Mengshan Glen, who was tortured with an electric baton until it ran out of charge. Guards then ordered other inmates to touch his skin with an exposed wire, going so far as to touch his genitals and threaten his ability to have children. This torture was not limited by the duration of the abuse. Instead, it was at the mercy of the guards' whims. When it comes to the brutal prison system in China, it seems like there's no room for choice or even basic human rights. Even the most basic needs are denied, and inmates are forced to live in deplorable conditions. But what's even more shocking is that despite these inhumane conditions, prisoners are still expected to meet quotas set by the government. And for some ethnic and religious minorities, it's not just about serving time, it's about becoming part of a sinister supply chain for the booming organ harvesting industry. In this system, prisoners are reduced to mere commodities, and their lives are treated as disposable. It begs the question, do they even have a choice? For many, it seems like the answer is a resounding no. The harsh reality of China's penal system is alarming. From wrongful arrest to forced organ harvesting, prisoners have no control over their lives. In a country where nothing is encouraged, even donating organs is forced upon death row inmates. But is there any hope for these prisoners? How can they fight back? We want to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. It's time to raise awareness about the injustices happening in China and find a way to support those who have fallen victim to its brutal system. Let's stand together and fight for human rights. Thank you for watching another amazing video from our True Crime team. Like, comment, and subscribe. And stay tuned to our next real-life true crime video. Life